All right, you two. DJ Fedora here with We Are Everywhere. And today, let's talk about...
Shall we begin?
Church pastors.
Not your ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill corner church pastor that spends his weeks preparing his sermons and his messages and delivers those on a Sunday morning ever so faithfully to his congregation. No, I'm talking about church pastors who make tons and tons of money being a pastor. Now, first off, is it wrong to make money being a pastor? Well, there's people that are of two minds of this situation. First being that a pastor is an individual who should be devoting his life to his congregation and his church, and as such should have very minimal living requirements as it is if he's spending all of his time focusing on his congregation and his messages. The second frame of mind is that pastors are just like everyone else and need to make a living too. So if you come together in a happy medium of those two, then you arrive at the situation of the typical church pastors need to make a living to get by, and they need to have a comfortable life. But the question comes to some of these mega churches that you see out there that look like miniature cities. Oh my gosh, they look like 5 or 6 huge, magnificent theater complexes put together into one, and it's massive. And I've got one just right down the road from where I live, and from what I understand, talking to a couple of the friends who know my wife there, they require their congregation, everyone in there, the families, to divulge their end-of-year tax returns to make sure that they are tithing enough to the church. And as such, people who make more money are actually asked to give more on top of what they already give. Their 10%, so to speak, that the Bible has pretty much laid down as being the atypical amount for tithing in church, is 10% of your increase. Now, there's another argument as to what is your increase. Is it your money before taxes? Is it your money after taxes? Is it your money after you've met all your bills and expenses before free money that is used to play and do whatever with? So that in itself is a whole nother discussion. However, think about joining a church where you go to listen to the message of God, Jesus Christ, and Christianity as a whole. And in order to set foot in that church, you have to give your tax return to them to mull over and decide, well, this is how much you're going to need to pay us this year. No. That's not how Christ's church works, or any church for that matter, as far as I'm concerned. Whether you're Buddha, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't have to divulge your tax return to be a member there. If you tithe to your church, your tithe is between you and your God. And if you feel that your tithe is honest, then there is nothing wrong with how much you tithe. If you tithe a pie to the church because that's all that you can tithe, as long as it's honest, that's your tithe. So let's look at mega churches, mega ministries, and some of these pastors. Let's look first at one of the most famous, and that is Franklin Graham. Yes, he is the son of Pastor Billy Graham, and he is the president of Billy Graham Evangelistic and Association of Samaritan's Purse. So you'd think that, him being a very, very highly man in his ministry, that he would know that money isn't everything. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Franklin Graham III makes over $1.2 million per year. Next up is Charles E. Blake. And with the help of over 25,000 weekly members, he has cashed in a salary of over $900,000 per year. And what do you think he does with all of his money, folks? Well, he relaxes in a 10,000 square foot mansion in Beverly Hills, California. Yes, he's in a mansion while all of his congregation is probably suffering, and some of them may even be on the streets. Next up is Billy Moyers. Billy Moyers, he started his career on PBS and has numerous television programs. He was eventually appointed to the Associate Director of the Peace Corps and was the 13th White House Press Secretary. He made over $20 million from public broadcasting alone. However, he continues to keep his official income and net worth an absolute secret. Yes, folks, he won't even divulge it. So we're just going to say $20 million on the bottom. Next up is Richard Rossi. Richard Rossi is a very, very popular Christian leader. His net worth has not officially been revealed either, but it's been estimated to be around $1 million. He and his wife created the Eternal Grace, which offered ministry service to actors and artists. He was referred to as the Pastor of the Stars before hitting an all-time low in 1994. His wife, Sherry, was found in a coma on the side of the road, and Rossi was convicted of second-degree assault. Yet, despite the controversy, Rossi continues to have a radio show called Richard Rossi Live, and he makes all that money. Now, the next up is Creflo Dollar, and he started his ministry very humbly in a school cafeteria with just 8 members in 1986. However, like all greedy people, he has since grown his fellowship to 30,000 members, gaining much of his fame from his non-denominational ministry, Dollar's World's Changers Church International. And they just opened up their second location in the Bronx, New York. And he has a best-selling book, countless speaking engagements. And so, like all good pastors out there giving his money to the public, he earns $27 million per year. So, you can tell that these television evangelists are not really truly holy men. They're really only ambitious. In fact, they're so ambitious, one time I saw a guy literally show just how ambitious he was. It came out in his sermon. He says, "When I was a child, I decided that I wanted to be the Savior of the world. And when they told me that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, at that point I knew it was all about your connections." Now, that wasn't really true. That didn't really happen. But you could imagine if something like that did, because it wouldn't be too far off from what happens every single day in these television evangelists and mega churches. The next pastor we're going to talk about is Paul Kane. Now, Paul Kane was one of the youngest ministers in the Voice of the Healing Revival back in the 1940s. But it wasn't until 2005 that he admitted in a letter that he had lots of problems when he was young during his most popular periods. And he was accused of public intoxication numerous times, as well as other struggles in his life involving lifestyle choices. Paul Kane, however, still to this day earns $1 million per year. with speaking engagements and such. Next, we move on to the ever-popular Jimmy Swaggart, and he was popular from launching a very successful radio ministry back in the 1950s, and it grew and grew and grew, and he had a lot of public prostitution scandals and things of that nature, but he has since regained his followers and his earnings and makes over $1.5 million per year. Yep, he's making pretty good money. Al Sharpton, another prime example. Al Sharpton is largely known for his civil rights activist. He fights alongside individuals like Jesse Jackson. Claims he was ordained as a minister at 9 years of age. However, that's a little bit far-fetched from my beliefs. However, he did become a Baptist minister in 1994. And he has made most of his earnings through television and radio appearances, and he has earned approximately around $5 million so far doing all that. So pretty good, about $5 million per year on that. He's banking. Charles Stanley. Now we're starting to get into the upper dollars here. Charles Stanley is popularly known for his radio ministries, syndicated radio broadcast called In Touch Ministries. And Charles Stanley began his ministry work back when he was 14 years old. And his program became translated in over 100 different languages. And so he's cashing in on a salary of $73 million per year. Not to leave women out of the fray, Juanita Bynum. Juanita Bynum is a gospel singer and actress, and she's is also a Pentecostal televangelist that consistently appears on the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And fulfilling her role as an empowerment coach, she travels throughout the U.S. and talks to audiences all over. And she makes over $10 million per year. So Joseph Prince, he's a senior pastor at the New Creation Church, one of Asia's biggest churches, and he uses CDs, DVDs, computer, internet, and all sorts of things like that. He's kind of pioneering the multimedia evangelism, and he's making over $44.7 million per year on this. Kirk Cameron, I don't know if you don't recognize that or not. Kirk Cameron, he was popular for Growing Pains back in the early 90s, and he has transitioned from TV to ministry, just one business to another. So he is making over $20 million per year. Yep, he has a camp called Firefly. Oh my gosh, there's just so many on this list. But I think the person that I want to get to, there's two people that I really just want to really talk about. One guy is very popular for spiritual healings. He's the guy that puts his hands on you and then they flop all over and they're better and everything like that. And that's Benny Hinn. And oh my gosh, if you have ever seen one of his shows before, it's just laced with just fraudulent, just, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say. It's just that bad. Find one of his shows and watch it, and it's ridiculous. He makes $42 million per year. Yep, he is cashing in. And however, he isn't all about keeping his cash for himself. He did donate $100,000 to the relief of the Katrina hurricane victims. The guy makes $42 million, and he donated $100,000, and that was it. I mean, that's chump change for him. Pat Robertson, he's the guy that, is well known for talking like this. Oh, where's ministries and stuff? $100 million per year. Kenneth Copeland. He is a charismatic movement leader, and he promotes controversial preaching styles such as prosperity gospel, and his church property contains a $6 million lakefront mansion, and they pay him. His net worth is $760 million. $760 million. Now, everybody knows this man, Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen. He has books. He's on TV. He's known as the Smiling Preacher. He is very recognizable. He is just pretty much, if you walk into like Target, you'll see one of his books on the shelves staring back at you. And he makes $40 million per year. Oh, man. Here is a guy that's a little more down to earth. Rick Warren. Now, he's got a mega church, but keeping only 10% of his income, he donates the remainder of it. He's the founder of the Saddleback Church. It's become one of the 8th largest in the country, and he has numerous books, but he's got a net worth of $25 million per year, and he donates 90% of that to the poor, sick, and to education initiatives. Now that is a true pastor. These other guys keep every penny for themselves. They drive $100,000 vehicles. They live in multi-million-dollar mansions. They have servants. They have security. They have, you name it, they've got it. So, the whole thing with this is that, in my opinion, I'm not going to go into my personal, where I go to church and what I do, where I go and how it's run, because I'm not saying that these guys are wrong in what they're doing. They worked hard. They were ambitious. They really built their ministries. But it's just the fact that they're making so much money doing it. It really makes you question, are they truly doing it for the Lord? Or are they doing it for the money? Now, Rick Warren, I can tell you right now, I'm going to tell you, he's doing it for the Lord because he donates 90% of his income. But these other people, Joel Olsteen, my gosh, the guy talks about in his sermons about how he started out so low and everything, and he took over his father's televised sermons in Lakewood's church. He's never had a low point in his life. I'm sorry, he hasn't. People like Billy Graham, people like Benny Hinn, the miracle crusades that he runs, all the healings that he does on stage. I'm sorry, he was pulled out as a fraud too. Yet he still to this day runs a ministry. It's ridiculous. And the fact that he's preying upon people. And a lot of these mega churches do that. They prey upon people. They prey upon their need to be accepted and their need to have a clear path in their life. And these pastors are giving people that clear path straight from their wallets. So, let's talk about this a little more, guys. Tell me what you think. What do you think about these multi-million-dollar earning mega churches and pastors and ministries out there? Do you think that they deserve to be making that much money? Or should they be giving the majority of that back to their church? Should these mega church pastors be driving around multi-100,000 vehicles, living in $6 million mansions, and just flying in their private jets wherever they want to go, going wherever they want to go, doing whatever they want to do off of their congregation's money, and requiring their congregation to give up their tax returns at the end of the year to make sure that they're giving their proper weekly tithe in church? I mean, come on. That's a little far-fetched and ridiculous. But tell me what you think. What do you think about churches who have everybody serve and nobody's paid? What do you think about places like that? Do you think that should be the way churches run? You tell me. So let's talk about it. And until we see you next time, we bid thee farewell. Good night.
What up?